We'll see you in a minute. Sorry for the shaky camera. I'm sitting there charging my phone. All right. See if Christian can get in. Cross my fingers. Come on, baby. Come on, baby. Drum roll. Yes. Yes.
Hello.
We got it.
I did have to be on a different account. We couldn't do it from the same account.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, we're learning as we go. For some reason, every time I try to do, I don't know, the first time I set it up, it always sets me back to landscape mode, and I can't figure out why, because I'm specifically clicking on the thing that toggles it. But anyway, whatever. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Common Mansplaining. Nobody's here yet, but when you get here, it'll be welcome.
Yes, indeed.
So what you want to talk about today?
I want to watch it and then see if there are any.
Want to watch what?
Oh, I guess channel.
Oh, okay.
Have it. Well, when let's see when people start entering.
Right.
So I've been having this discussion with my nephew, who's become quite the anti-capitalist.
Interesting.
And as only the sort of callow youth who've never even studied economics. Right?
Hey Ben, what's up?
Hey Ben, it's sort of like. So I sent him this little video about how, like, hey, rights to food and shelter and electricity aren't really rights, right? And it was like, well, they're not rights because they require somebody else's labor.
Right.
So if that becomes we don't have a right to force somebody else to do work to create something, to build a house for us for free, to supply electricity for us for nada. The rights are more intrinsic than that, but yeah, needs are not something we have where because there's also no limit to it. Like with him, where at what point he thought providing shelter was. I'm like, all right, well, at what standard of shelter?
Right.
Is it lean-to enough? Does it have to have insulated walls with indoor plumbing, working AC, windows, egress?
Line the walls with gold.
Right. A nice. Right. So, at what standard? Right. We have to have a refrigerator. And at what standard can you just require these things and then just choose? I haven't found anything fulfilling in my life I want to do. So I'm just going to chill here and not work and not produce anything, just consume until I find something worth doing, right? And now, granted, right? He talks about we are a wealthy and prosperous country, and we can handle a few people like that. Essentially, intellectuals like highly design are so prosperous they can have some people that don't work in the fields, don't do blue collar jobs, don't produce anything,
right?
With their labor, but then they add, certain things like that. And we can handle a few, some degree of those, but when you make it a right, you're going to have more people choose to do that than we can sustain, right? And that's the big question. That's the whole issue with immigration and supplying immigrants with all of these. Here's a place to stay, some food or some clothes, things like that. Like that's something we could do if the numbers were low, right? If we're getting 250,000 a year, right? Then we could take that in and be like, hey, welcome to our country. Let me show you around. What type of things do you like to do? But when you have 10 million, all of a sudden it's like, look, you're on your own. You better be productive or get out of here. And if you break any rules, you better get out of here now. Right. And so it's sort of like there's this line. It's like, yeah, that would be great in small numbers. And people that have only maybe don't live in border cities or have only ever dealt with people in small numbers, the idea of illegal immigration feels more possible than those who are clearly overwhelmed by it.
Right. So, hey, listen, everybody that's just tuning in, I want to say welcome to the channel. We really appreciate all your support and your viewership. Tonight we're talking about rights and duties, and the way we've done this in the past, and I'm open to feedback, is we kind of spit some truth, and then over the course of 15 minutes, people will put some questions or comments in the chat, and we'll kind of go back and review them. That may not be the best system. It may be the best system. We don't know yet. But anyway, if you have some ideas for us, we're definitely open to feedback. But yeah, if you guys have questions, we don't want to cut anybody off midstream, like right in the middle of, especially in the middle of one of Christian's famous long diatribes. We wouldn't want to cut that off. And but after he's done, we'll kind of cycle back and then we'll get back to you guys. So just stay tuned. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think that it's the same with welfare, right? It's the same with any situation where you require somebody else's participation to help out. Now, interestingly, our entire system, to a degree, is predicated on a redistribution of wealth to a small degree, right? Our entire system, because you have to redistribute wealth.
That's the social contract when we come together and live in cities. We sort
Right.
of agree to a reasonable amount of that. Like,
Right.
we're
Well,
armies to defend us from being invaded by,
right.
power, things like that. And police, law system to protect us against corruption, right?
Right.
We hope the government will create this social structure where prosperity can take place.
Right. Hey, Tanya, how you going? So yeah, one of the things that, in my mind, is the difference between, of course, the Constitution clearly lays out which items are okay for us to use for the federal government to take money to redistribute to help the society. And really, if it's not on that list, should be simple enough to understand that it's not supposed to be done by the federal government. But even if you didn't have that list, I think there's an even easier method, and that is non-rivalrous, non-excludable goods. And so for those of you out there who are not as familiar with what that is, basically that is, if you got a good and it can run out, then it's non-rival. Then it's rivalrous. That means people have to fight over it to make sure that they get the resources that are involved. And if there's a good that is right,
it's a scarce resource.
Scarce resource, right? So, like for example, food is rivalrous. Right. So if everybody wants to get food, there is only a finite amount of food. Even if we produce a lot, there's a finite amount of food that people can have. And so if one person is eating far more than somebody else, there can be an unfair distribution. Another thing that makes it important is excludability, right? So if some people get access to this good and some people don't, that's what makes it excludable, right? So, for example, if again with the food situation, if the resources are scarce and then one person gets them and somebody else doesn't, then you've got an excludable good. So, the reason that things like the Army aren't on that list is they are on the list of stuff that we can do, and they're not on the list of rivalrous or excludable goods, is because everyone gains the benefit of the Army, every single person, and we all gain that benefit evenly, right? They defend America because they defend America, not because like one person has a need for defense from a foreign nation and somebody else doesn't. We all have the same need for foreign defense, from defense from foreign parties that are illicit. And it basically doesn't run out. Like once we send somebody over to go fight and defend, they're still able to defend us again, right? The Army is still there, hopefully, knock on wood, and then they can continue defending us. So that's what makes that kind of a right, like a fair distribution across the nation. Now, to contrast that, something people that are really, really fighting for right now is healthcare. Right? Now, healthcare is an excludable and a rivalrous good. Now, that isn't to say that we can't figure out something to distribute healthcare across the nation, but understand that when you do it, you're not going to have a fair distribution, because I'm a relatively healthy 40-year-old, give or take a couple years, and I'm not going to use the same health resources as a 350-pound diabetic that's 55 years old and smokes 4 packs of cigarettes a day. Like, I just never will end up using the same medical resources that that person does. As a matter of fact, I may not even use medical resources at all. Like, there are people that go through life that just never end up using healthcare at all, like literally ever. And there are people that use it all the time. So it's unfair to request for the participation of everyone, right, to donate to one person's, one person who's going to use it a lot more than somebody else. That makes it an unfair distribution. And medical resources do run out. Like in America, we have the grace of the luxury of having all of these resources that are like, we're so abundant, and so it seems like it wouldn't run out, but it does run out. Like, that's why COVID, they were talking about all the beds, and the hospital beds, how many ventilators we've got. It's only a certain finite amount. So that's my big line, is non-rival risk, non-excludable goods, because that's the only way to fairly, redistribute. Now, one thing I want to mention is when we talk about rights, it's kind of, hey, Thanos, how's it going? Please don't wipe out half the universe.
That half, the one half.
Yeah, just if you do it, maybe get all the liberals. I'm kidding. When it comes to rights, it's I think the definition of right is kind of important. I think what a right is truly is the items that we need to fulfill the will of God. Now, I know that's kind of a spicy take. I know it's kind of a religious take, and some of you guys out there might not be religious, but yeah. So if I have a right, like the things that I need to do to fulfill the will of God,
given to you by God,
right?
given
It's given to us by God for the fulfillment of God too, because it's like the things that I need to do day to day for God, like worship Him and make sure that I, increase in grace, make sure that I, try to seek salvation. I need life, I need liberty, and I need the pursuit, the freedoms. Those are the basic freedoms. Now, I personally am a favorite of John Locke. I say life, liberty, and pursuit of property, because I think property is far more. It's far more easy.
It's tangible, yeah.
Yeah, right. Like, people say happiness, and it's like, how do you legalize around happiness?
Yeah, it's insubstantial. I had happiness for dinner, right?
Yeah. So let's take a look at what we got so far. Medicine is, it's essentially right. It could be a commodity. Now, these economic definitions.
Medicine. Healthcare is different from medicine, and health insurance is different from health. So those are the things. So you got medicine, the commodity, healthcare, right? The quality of care. The doctors are they're not a commodity. There are better doctors than others. And then health insurance, right, is not a commodity. There's definitely better health insurance than that.
Yes. Yeah. Now, that isn't to say that I like America's healthcare system, because I hate it. And I think there's definitely room for improvement. It's a very complex system. It's something I've been working on, like kind of as a pet project over time, is trying to put together, my own, the Edward Palantonio fix to healthcare. And I don't think that we're about to solve the whole problem, tonight, but yeah, it's a Frankensteinian monster. It's like worst of both worlds. But getting back to rights, one of the things though that's really key, I think, is in that third right, is the pursuit of happiness is not the same thing as happiness. The pursuit of property is not the same thing as property, right? So when people say they want food, shelter, healthcare, stuff like that, that is stuff that we have to pursue, not stuff that we are just granted.
Yeah, we're not endowed by our Creator with these inalienable rights, but
that's a really good point. Tanya says people can often relate happiness to the property they have. Yeah, it's almost identical in the legal system in America. Like, you could almost just replace happiness with property, and it would come out, the same thing. As a matter of fact, I've been told, I don't know if this is true. This is kind of like an urban legend. I've been told that Jefferson only changed it from property to happiness because he didn't want women to have property at the time. He knew that was kind of his spicy thing. I don't know if that's true. I haven't fact checked it enough, but it's kind of a an interesting little quirk in history. But yeah,
Well, I wanted to say, like, and I think for the most of our history in America, that was the case, and it was really starting with the New Deal with FDR. Started an expansion of government, and especially with what we call good government. Right? Have you heard of the principle of good government?
I have not. Fill me in.
So the idea of good government is not just like, oh, Trump's doing a good job. But it's to now not just provide a social structure and these core functions, but now to provide goods, yeah, like Social Security, oh, retirement. Now, now the government will provide some income for you in retirement. Oh, now the government will provide, we'll have a housing and urban development. We'll have a HUD. We'll have all these things to provide more goods and get people relying. That's a sort of good government that really expanded that's the welfare state, but it's normally considered. And when people like these, you see sometimes they need to do it on a limited basis for a particular area, like some area there's no developers that will build homes there, so the government comes in and builds some homes temporarily. But what happens is it doesn't become a temporary because those people don't want to lose their jobs. So it's like the HUD's like, okay, what else do we do? And they're going to find something, and then the government expands and expands and becomes this unwieldy thing, and there's so much waste in good government. They also have found historically that they think civilizations fall, that it's something civilizations, even ancient civilizations, would go to when the government would start providing for their citizens rather than just creating a place where the citizens could have an opportunity. When they start providing things like that, when they fall, now the citizens can't provide for themselves, and you have a whole collapse, right? That's
right.
And even Charles Manson, right? His sort of prediction would be like the government would have a sort of debt crisis, right?
Okay.
And wouldn't be able to pay welfare to the inner cities.
Right.
And then people in the inner cities who rely on that would start rioting. And that would lead to helter skelter, top down, and to what he called that we become so in debt to foreign countries we can't continue to pay these goods anymore, right?
Right.
And it's kind of scary, right? You think of like the instability and why weaning people slowly off that, so that if the government can't pay it, they don't immediately become so desperate they start rioting.
Right. Yeah, like I can't remember who said this, but I think it's like a classic phrase. It's something like we're only like 3 days of meals away from a rebellion or something like that, or something along there, like 3 paychecks away or something like that. But yeah, I mean, it just shows how fragile the system is, especially what are we at? We're at like $36 trillion in debt, something outrageous.
I thought it was 35, but effectively, yeah. 36.
Yeah, I mean, well, it goes up so fast. I mean, it wouldn't be. Last I looked, it was climbing at a rate that, I mean, you're talking billions of dollars a day. That can you imagine that? I mean, that's the problem. I think part of the problem is people can't even fathom how much money that is. Like they can't even, in their mind, it just doesn't register, because I've never seen $1 billion. I've never seen $1 million, right? Like for the common man, we have no clue what this kind of money is like. But a friend of mine used to, who is rich, he used to say, $1 billion here, $1 billion there, pretty soon you're talking real money. And it's like, what? And with the debt that large, this is a very shaky system. And I think people get to the point where the money, that number is so large where they're like, oh, no big deal, right? Like it goes to 40 trillion, no big deal. If it goes to 50 trillion, no big deal. But I'm telling you, it comes due someday. It comes due someday. No matter how abstract we've made this, no matter how we've made it kind of like now it's no longer backed with gold. It's backed by the will of the American people. And what that really means is we've got a strong military. And so no one's going to tell us we have to pay them back. But aside from that, like eventually people are going to call in their debts. They're going to get to the point where they're like, listen, you never pay us back. We're not going to give you any more. And
well, yeah. I mean, It was Andrew Jackson who decided we're going to pay off all our debt. And ever since then, like countries have always like gone through bankruptcies, except America has just had a policy we're always going to pay back our debts. And it's why our credit's so good. We've never
Right.
defaulted on loans.
Yeah.
And so that would be, but it doesn't mean we can be irresponsible. I mean, just as an example, right? So certain states and certain places start bringing in these revenues, and the numbers are so big they get cavalier about them. So they talked about. Have you heard about the steps to the Albany Capitol building in
No.
New York? So Albany, the Capitol building in Albany, New York, is about 100 years old. It has these very big steps that go up, kind of walkway underneath it goes through, and yeah, they're having some problems. They need to be rebuilt.
Okay.
So about 2012, some bids were put in to rebuild them about $17 million. Right. And so that's greasing
Yep.
somebody's wheels. Well, they didn't do it at that time. And they passed it kind of, we'll put that off, put it off. We can still walk on the stairs until now we're at a situation where they can't put it off anymore. They have to,
Right.
They needed to be done in 2012. Now they're, 13 years later, they have to be done. Even worse, they're not safe. Anyway, all kinds of problems. You see pictures of nobody standing on these stairs.
Right. And now it's 100 times as much.
It's it's like over $50 million to do these stairs, and it's like $1 million a stair, like a little more than $1 million a stair to build these stairs, and it's like, no, somebody could go and cut that down and find that, but it's like not worth their time. They see big numbers all the time. They see billion this, billion that, like whatever. Okay, or as long as this money's going into somebody's, he'll spend it. It'll be fine, right? That kind of cavalier is how we get in this, and that's, I think, what fiscal conservatives have for a long time wanted to say, all right, when are we going to get somebody who's going to look at that and say no more?
Right. Right. And I think, it's Elon Musk, hopefully with Doge, is able to trim some of the fat. And even after he trimmed, let's say he trims $1 trillion, we're still $1 trillion over budget. It's like we're still not making. The only way to actually get us back into line is to get what's rid of what they call the permanent spending, right? Like the stuff that you can't get rid of. And I'm like, why not? Are we not the government? Like what is your job? Like you voted this stuff in, you can vote it out. I don't understand. Like, and what's always driven me crazy is over the last few years, it's been like, oh, the Republicans want to get rid of Social Security. The Republicans want to get rid of Social Security. I'm like, they're supposed to. That's what their job is as conservatives, is to at least try to keep it down, like we maybe privatize some of it, do something with it so that you've got some kind of austerity measure other than let's just raise taxes. Like that's
the cap on entitlements is so reasonable, but the left, they can never cap their spending.
So let's see what is that.
Tanya's statement. So actually, in India, a devout Hindu woman, the only property she's allowed to own is jewelry, which is why a devout Hindu woman would have so much jewelry. It's the way her husband giving her a gift. It's actually property that could stay with her if he died or anything like that. It's the only property she's allowed to own. That's why jewels were so big in their culture. Obviously, we've come a long way in understanding of property and understanding of women and our growth in the country. But still, the rights are inalienable things, the things endowed from our Creator, and goods that require other people, no matter how essential do we think they have. Hey, hunger is bad, being cold is bad, not having shelter, being homeless is bad. They're not things that the government should be required to provide to its citizens.
Yeah, I agree. And the other thing too is one important thing to note about rights is that there is a primal right, right? So the right to life is the right upon which all other rights are based, right? So one thing that you often see in political conversations, for example, about abortion, is there's this kind of like tension between the right to life and the right to liberty, right? But understand that the right to life is the primal right. And, like, what is bodily autonomy if you have no living body, right? It just doesn't matter, right? What is happiness if you have no body to be happy? Like, if that's so that you have to have life first, and
Human
then
life, yeah.
right. So there is a structure. It's not, life isn't like one right among many. It's the right upon which all of the rights are built. And the other thing too is, as I mentioned, rights are kind of like the will, the items that are necessary to fulfill the will of God. If you've got a right, almost always what that means is you have a duty that is assigned to it, right? So people usually neglect the second part. They think that what a right is not actually what I would call a right. What they call a right, they mean entitlement. What they mean is it's something that you have, that is just supposed to be granted to you with absent duties,
With
like without
no effort, yeah.
no strings attached, right? And I don't think that that's correct. I think that when you have life, you have life because you have to fulfill the will of God. When you have liberty, it is because you are to help your fellow man, so forth and so on. And so I think these duties being attached to the rights are really, really important in today's society. That's been kind of forgotten. What is Ben says? I wonder how much is owed to the richest families, because yeah, he said the Rockefellers own a lot of the debt. I think they do, but unfortunately, a far greater portion of our debt is owned by other countries like China, adversaries, various enterprises, companies like BlackRock, Vanguard, SSGA, and that's a story for another day, because we should do something on BlackRock and Vanguard, because I think they're viable threats to the world. But that's probably a topic for another day. But yeah, the debt is owed by a lot of people, and unfortunately, there's another aspect to the debt that the government can kind of twist the knobs on, and that's what a lot of time constitutes our inflation. Because instead of paying off debt, or instead of, like, basically using the money that they have to fulfill their obligations to the American people, what they can do is just print more, right? Because this is the government, so all they have to do is just print more money. Now, that's it. If only we could just print money and then actually have that extra wealth. But unfortunately, that's not what happens. What happens is, if you print more money, you automatically devalue every other dollar bill that has ever been made. And so now you're dealing with, like, if let's say I've got $50 trillion, in circulation. We don't, but it's much, much smaller. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, and then I print, $50 more trillion. Well, all I've done is make all of our money half as valuable, right? I might be able to use it temporarily, like, and shovel it into whatever pork barrel spending the government wants to do. But then afterwards, the American people feel the brunt of that. And it's basically like a tax. It's a tax that we basically don't vote on. We don't even, have any say in. And it's one of the chief reasons that I'm against the kind of spending that Biden did while he was in office. And even to a certain extent, Trump. They're both very big spenders. I'm not going to lie. Like, don't get me wrong, Trump's got some strengths and his weaknesses. This is one of his weaknesses, is that he spends a lot. He doesn't shy away from it. Now, the one difference I would draw between the two is that, whereas Biden just spends because he just spends, that's just the thing. Trump spends in a weird kind of way, and it's like a very business-like way. He's spending in a way that is anticipatory of the assets that you have in the business, and so he's basically trying to develop an asset so that it can have a greater value in the future. That's where a lot of, like, our oil, drill baby drill stuff comes from, because he's basically trying to develop the assets that America has. And so if you can do that, if you're spending $1 trillion to make 10 trillion,
well, spending is different than investing.
Right.
Spending is different than investing. I did want to. I think it'd be good to have somebody out here who maybe understands the economic principles a little bit better about the principle. And I'm wondering how you feel about the strong dollar and the weak dollar, because this is how it relates to trade. So what they've talked about, what happens if Trump balances the budget, right? So no more deficit spending with Doge, balances the budget and starts paying down the deficit. Right. Is the dollar gets a lot stronger.
Yep.
So when you have a strong dollar, what happens is it becomes more expensive for foreign countries to buy good American goods, and becomes cheaper for us to buy foreign goods.
Yep.
And so they've worried if the dollar becomes too strong, then our incentive to buy foreign goods becomes too strong. Because they're so much cheaper, our dollar's going so much farther, and then it's harder for our companies to sell their goods elsewhere because the dollar's so strong, and that's how we deplete American manufacturing.
Yeah,
right?
that is interesting.
Right, and then you print all this money and you make a weak dollar. So now all of a sudden, other countries can buy our stuff, right? And it's more expensive for us to buy Japanese stuff. So now all of a sudden we want to buy American cars instead of Japanese cars or things like that. So this is the sort of thing I think in general we should always pay our debts and have less. That there's real worries about, like, when we do that, which is basically being responsible.
Right.
That makes the dollar really strong, and there are effects of that. I'm maybe I'm a little bit like Trump, like, hey, let's see what everything's like with less illegal immigrants, because people say, oh no, we'll not be able to pick our food and build our buildings without illegal immigrants, and we're like, well, let's just see how bad it is. And I'm kind of in that feeling, like, let's have a strong dollar for a while, very strong dollar, and let's just see. Maybe it's not that bad. Maybe it's not this hellscape that they make it out to be. But I would kind of like somebody with a little more. I mean, I've taken economics a little bit enough to understand the basics, but somebody who knows the math good.
Yeah, that's what I am too. I know just enough to be dangerous, but not enough to, like, really say I know anything. Yeah, that's an interesting, and there's other sides to that dilemma too, because of course, one thing Trump can do to countermand that is to start tariffing everything, right? Because that's like the game.
Right. Tomorrow's tariff day. You heard this?
I heard about it. I haven't looked into it yet. I heard about it, though.
Oh yeah. So tomorrow, the first tariff is 25% on everything coming from Canada and Mexico.
Nice. Okay. Interesting.
Those are supposedly going to be in place until they stop the inflow of illegal migrants into our country and illegal drugs. That Mexico actually puts forth an effort into policing the border from their side.
Seems fair, right? I mean, it's their responsibility.
Canada's not really doing anything either to stop stuff coming down from Canada into the U.S. And certainly they have tariffs on their products. People in Canada, Mexico's been sort of like quiet about it. People in Canada are a little bit fired up. So we'll see, if they get into a trade war. But I think Trump's like, how bad can it be? Usually everybody's afraid of a trade war. But he's like, we'll give it a shot. We'll take it on.
Be interesting. Let me let's see. Jessica. Hey Scott, how's it going? Thanks for coming. Thanks for watching. Let's see. Tanya says, I mean, there's no price on life, and your life is worth your own values. That's an interesting. It's a spicy take. Actually, I kind of like it. It's kind of neat. I think that life is priceless, right? Like in a infinite sense. I don't think that there's a way that you can put a value on it. I think that we've come together as a society and decided that human life is valuable, for better or worse. We've already made that determination.
For better.
I would claim for better, right? And it's basically infinite value, right? It's human life basically is there's basically no circumstance except in the pro-choice, pro-life argument or maybe the euthanasia argument where there's ever an argument about it, right? Like that's the only time where people are like, maybe we should devalue life in a certain form. But I'm against that categorically. Personally, to me, even future life would be outrageously valuable, would be infinite. Because think about it, like what if you've got half, let's say an unborn child is worth half as much as a human, and the human's worth infinite, then the unborn life is still worth infinite.
It's interesting. Canada says if you're in pain, say you're having a chronic pain, say some surgery has gone bad and it's causing you chronic pain. Would you like to die?
Nah.
Right? Like the government will say this. That's why the Canada thing is somewhere else. Now, I think it's interesting that Tom uses the word value, right?
Right.
Because dearness gives everything its value. You heard this? this
What would
phrase,
say it again? I only heard part
dearness.
of it.
Dearness gives everything its value.
Interesting. Okay.
Right? So, like, so how dear is that life? And that's sort of like, have you ever heard the Gilbert and Sullivan song "I've Got a Little List"?
I've heard of it. I haven't heard
It's
it.
from the Mikado. It's a comedic song, but kind of morose about this executioner who sometimes it may happen that we need an execution for some sort of state reason that a victim must befriend. He says, "I've got a little list of people that that will never be missed." Right, and so all these people who are very unlikable and if you watch the song, I've got a little list. In new productions, they always update it with new references, new cultural references. They don't use the old ones from the 19th century. But yeah, there's dearness. Like, it's hard for us. It's one thing for us to philosophically say that every human life is the same, but people,
Right.
they feel the people that they know and love, those lives are more valuable than the people they don't know and love.
Of course,
And
of course.
it's that tribal thing. I think that Christianity has gone a long way towards breaking that down, and that we're not nearly as tribal in our love as we used to be, and have much more love towards strangers. I mean, orphanages were not a thing before Christianity,
right?
But that it's a challenge. It's something that's not natural for us.
Right. Yeah, and it's still, and it can go too far, right? It can get to the point where, well, people, it's hard to separate having a love for someone, having compassion for somebody, and having a legal obligation or moral, like a legal duty to somebody. And so one of the things that we're fighting a little bit here in America with the immigration issues are we love everybody, right? We love for everyone to enjoy the same rights, pleasures, freedoms that America has. But our duty is still to America first, right? And so that's the complicated.
And it's sort of it's this term value, because in economics it's like, if you value something, let's just say my coat, right?
Your life preserver?
My life preserver vest is providing me with, let's say, $20 of utility.
Sure.
Right now, right? That's the value it's providing me for.
$20.
And I spent $20 for it, and it's providing that level of utility. But now somebody comes along who's willing to pay me $40 for it. Right? Economics say I should sell this and go find another $20 utility thing. Right? If you can get a higher value than the utility you're getting for it. And conversely, so it's like when immigrants come, the first few immigrants are adding value, adding utility, and we're happy to have them. But like, at what value? Right, when they start not only adding value, they start costing us. They start becoming negative value. That's what we've presented. The classic economic thing is ice cream cones on a hot day. You're walking by an ice cream cone vendor who's selling ice cream cones for $5, right? But you're like, I'm so hot and thirsty. I've been walking so long. That first ice cream cone you buy for $5 actually gives you $20 of utility. It's so good.
Yeah, right.
So you finish that ice cream, and now if to get another ice cream cone, you'd get $7 utility. It's not the same because you've just had one, but it's still a hot day, and so you buy another ice cream cone and
they're busy. They're all melting as it's going on.
Yeah. But then the third ice cream cone would only give you $2 of utility, and it costs $5, so you don't buy it, right? But But it's clearly like, if buying that ice cream cone gave you negative utility, i.e., you'd be worse than you were before, like, there's no way you would ever buy it. And that's kind of what we're seeing, like, when you talk about the value of immigrants, right? They're equating, like, those first few 100,000 are great. They're adding value.
Right.
But the next 8 million are negative.
I think it's really important to distinguish too, when we talk about the value of immigrants, we're not talking about the value of their lives, right? Because it's not like we're killing them if we don't accept them in the nation. It's not like the choice is
Yeah.
life or, well, I just want to
We're talking
clarify.
about the worth. We're talking about the worth. Yeah, the worth of souls is the same. Worth and value is different. That's why I thought it was interesting she used the word value, and why
Right.
I kind of wanted to use that kind of riff on that for a little bit because
Yeah, yeah. Well, my
worth of
point was
souls
just,
is great and equal whether you're an immigrant or a citizen.
well,
But the
right. Well,
value, I think, maybe it's
well,
the
the value of the human life is the same, but it's the value of their utility for America that changes, right? So, like,
yeah.
yeah. So it's not their lives that we're talking about, right? Because again, human life has infinite value. So even if it's depleted or like half value or quarter value human life, it's still worth the same. Still worth infinite value, but their utility for America is not worth the same. So they're still alive. They're just going to be alive in Mexico or Peru or wherever it's not like it changes. Now I have a question.
Sure.
We're heading toward what might be the age of abundance. And what I mean by that is it's possible. In fact, I would claim even likely that artificial intelligence over the next couple of years, maybe 5 or 10, will produce scientific breakthroughs that are outrageous, things that we've never understood, could never have fathomed before, like as crazy as like trying to show someone 200 years ago a laptop computer with full wireless capability, like they would just blow their mind. They wouldn't understand. And I think we're on the verge of stuff like medical immortality, like essentially infinite resources, not infinite, but high
Like zero
finite
point
enough.
energy, static electricity just from the air kind of thing.
Yeah, like stuff like that. We're already on the fringe of it. Like I'm already seeing. One thing I do. You're probably better at reading like the daily news than I am, but I
Mhm.
spend like maybe 2-3 hours a day because I just love this stuff. It's like my hobby. I read about the newest fusion generator and how well it performed, and the newest da 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 da, and the newest the. I mean, there's some crazy stuff going on. Like I don't. Have you heard of electroceuticals?
I have not.
So electroceuticals is cutting edge med tech that is being developed. One of the ways that your body, when it starts developing, it's got stem cells, and the stem cells start migrating based on they're supposed to be brain cells and muscle cells and heart cells and stuff like that. Well, one of the reasons the primary reason that they're able to find out where they go is your body has an intricate and very complex electromagnetic frame, like a silhouette, a system that tells every cell where to go, and they all communicate through this electromagnetic forum with each other. Now, electroceuticals can master control of that. So one thing that might happen, for example, if you lose an arm in a car crash, they just tell your body to start migrating cells back to that arm and rebuild it. That's full regeneration. When your body has full
That's
regenerative
excellent
capability,
stuff. Yeah.
right? Like what kills you at that point? Nothing. The only thing that kills you is a massive trauma right away, like falling off a cliff and hitting the right. Then you're not right. That's the only thing. You wouldn't die of even extended diseases like cancer because you could just regenerate as it's going. Now you'd have to solve the cancer too at some point, but you could literally keep yourself alive forever. That's insane. There's other things too that are coming out. Very, very crazy. Like it would blow your mind just to even hear about it. Like there's a guy in
Yeah.
Harvard that he's working with telomeres. Are you familiar with telomeres? Have you heard of that? So a DNA chain at the end of these are chains of proteins, right? And at the end
Mhm.
of the chain are these things that are called telomeres. And basically over the course of your life, as your DNA chain breaks down, these are used to supply the gaps. And so they fix you but of course as you do that they get shorter and shorter and shorter over the course of your life, and eventually you run out of material to fill in your genetic code, and
Okay.
then that's when you start having cancer. So it's true that literally everyone will have cancer eventually if they live long enough, right? It may not be everybody, like most people will die before it happens, but like if you live to 150 or 1 or 200 or 300, eventually those telomeres run out and you lose the ability to fill in your genetic gap, and then but this guy has a
Yeah.
way to reset the telomeres. So like he basically had these rats, and one rat these are twins, they're born the same day, and one rat is like old, blind, like can barely walk, limping around, and the other rat who's been reset is like breaking records on the rat treadmill, beating records in the like unbelievable stuff. This medical, like we're literally on the verge of medical escape velocity. We're on the verge of almost infinite energy, almost infinite resources, infinite food, infinite, like not infinite, but so high that it won't matter. And when that happens, and when AI has started taking all of the jobs and fulfilling all of the resource problems for humanity, I don't know what happens. That's such a weird, like I don't know what happens. Then do we start sharing, like we're like, do we start a universal basic income? I don't know. Like if nobody's working because all of our things are supplied, but then like we hoard the supplies and then don't give it to somebody. It's kind of a weird, it's just a weird world that we're coming into.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see. I mean, there's been technology like graphene. You know what graphene is, right?
Yes, which is outrageous.
Which is outrageous, but manufacturing or implementing that graphene, they've known about graphene for about 10 years.
Right.
Manufacturing it to a way where it can be useful is still out of.
Well, they're just on the edge of getting that too. There's been some new developments in graphene. I don't know if you've heard, but they were able to make they're able to start making 3D printing it, like basically like sheet upon sheet upon sheet of two-dimensional, which is insane. Like how do you construct this stuff at the atom level? That's insane. Like our technology already is like outrageous, but they made this suit of armor, like a body armor, and it's like 20 times the strength of steel and 1/50th the weight or something stupid like that. It's like, well, of course, eventually we're going to make everything in the military out of this, of course. And graphene is like a super resource for like electronics. It's like outrageously conductive and stuff like that. It's like the most insane material on earth. And we're like,
it's the best for batteries, right? Batteries that don't require lithium or rare metals, just require carbon. They charge faster, they store more energy, and aren't as prone to explode and have fires that put out toxic fires. Tanya, we haven't discussed AI fully. We did a AI discussion in one of our long form videos, right? Eddie is much more pessimistic about feeling that AI will be a negative.
I'm a doomer. I'm an AI doomer, but
I think there'll be adjustments in innovation, especially as we talked about the ability to interact with black box AI.
Right.
I think it's something that will come. Now, did you hear about the big story in AI this week? Right, coming out of China. Did you follow that?
Yeah, DeepSeek. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you?
Yeah, DeepSeek is nuts.
So,
yeah, DeepSeek is a situation where, basically they've used like less technologically advanced chips.
Yeah.
They've used the old chips and stuff and they train it not even as long. It's got fewer parameters, and yet it's still performing almost at the same level as our current AI systems. But the truth is, there's still going to be a gap. What happens is, as these AIs develop, there's sheer power or ability, and then there's resources required to accomplish. And we do this thing where we kind of catch up with one or the other. So right now, like what ChatGPT does is like, boom, power and ability, and then we find a way to do it cheaper and easier, right? And then we do it, but we improve. And this is basically the pattern for all technologies. Like we do it, we find a technology and like, wow, let's see how fast we can make this, or how strong we can make this, or how many horsepower this car can have or something. And then we find out how cheaply can we do it after we know what we're shooting for. And then of course, when someone makes another breakthrough and it's like, how fast, how powerful can we do this? Then can we make it, industrially compliant? Can we make it such that we can send this out to every house, as opposed to just being able to accomplish this in one lab with $1 billion, right? Yeah. So that's just the pattern of now. DeepSeek is just the next step in that stage, right? They just basically, what shocked everybody though
You
was
don't need
that
to.
usually
You
it
don't
was
need
us
to
doing
run the. You don't need to run it on the most expensive NVIDIA chips.
right. And what shocked everybody is like it was supposed to be us doing that. We're supposed to be the ones like, okay, now let's see how cheap we can do it. But China was like, let's see how cheap we can do it. They're like, whoa, 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 whoa. What do you mean China's doing this? What? And I mean, this is a dangerous game. This is a dangerous game. The next wave of the world is going to be AI. It's going to be all AI. It's going to be AI everywhere. AI is going to be doing jobs. AI is going to be doing, you know, driving you to work, talking to you, calling you on the phone. I mean, it's already calling me on the phone like 7 times a day. Do you get those calls where they like call you and it's like an AI first, but they just say hello, and then once you interact, then they switch you over to somebody, like they switchboard you?
They'll try to. I can tell. I can Turing test that their AI pretty quickly, and I'll even say something like, "Who is the president of the United States?" And then they'll keep going the conversation. Then I'll hang up, something like that.
I say, oh, is this another bot? And they say, I'm very sorry. We will take you off our call list, which is BS because they don't actually
Yeah,
take me off the call.
they do not. Now, Tanya. Maybe we should react to that documentary. We'll look it up and maybe do that. We could do it as a
Good
video.
idea.
But I tend to be more hopeful that if this age of abundance driven by AI and other things will increase leisure, right? And you see cities that had a golden age, like Vienna, Athens, really, they had a lot of leisure. Now, the ancient civilizations, Athens had a lot of leisure because of slavery or for other exploitative reasons. But if we have a lot of leisure, what do our goals become? Right? Like maybe we have a pursuit of beauty, a pursuit of right beauty in the arts, in music, and
Maybe what we do is our new goal becomes to watch the Common Mansplaining podcast forever, like just over and over and over, because you don't have to do anything else, and we're the best entertainment around. And so you're just like, you know what? I don't have to go to work today. Let's put on Common Mansplaining and see what they have to say about the latest development. I mean, now, here's the problem, though. The problem is leisure kills man. I don't know if you know this, but there have been studies that like the reason that people often die shortly after they retire is because they're not active anymore, because they don't have to be.
All right, now, so leisure.
No. That isn't to say that everyone won't. Like some people, like you and me, probably like I'll go to the gym. I'll go, I'll take on 4 hobbies. I'll do more videos. I'll be active. I'll do stuff. I'll travel the world if I have that ability. But not everybody will. Many people will just sit in front of the TV and do nothing.
Well, leisure it's like this. We have. I don't have to go out and plow the lower 40 acres and feed all the cows. I have time to do this podcast. That's the type of leisure that you have a class of people that aren't so consumed with providing for their material needs, their physical, temporal needs. They have more time to engage in, writing, philosophy, or advancement or beauty. Now we don't just need to create the fastest shack possible. Now we have time to actually create buildings that are beautiful. Beautiful. We can do landscape. We can grow things that are beautiful because AI is taking care of everything else. So we can have
AI trims the grass and mows the lawn while we build up.
We become beekeepers or something. Yeah.
Let me ask you this though. So in that age of abundance, let's say we finally get there and we've got nigh infinite resources, high finite resources, right? Now, I've been living my life off these principles that you can't require the participation of others to fulfill the needs of some, right? Like you can't take my money.
That's coercion.
Now, but when you get to the point where we've got that age of abundance and everyone is taken care of, the only way to take care of everyone is to redistribute wealth, because otherwise it will still be hoarded, just like it is now. Now, the reason it makes sense to hoard it now is because there are finite resources. But then it won't be, right? Like at that point in time, when there's so much food in the universe that you use like there's not enough people to eat it, but the food company has it all, and you still have to buy it from them, right? It's kind of an awkward situation because, like, why are you buying it from them? Because there's so much that we can all. But then, of course, if you don't, why would they ever produce it, right? Like but you'd have the AIs doing it all, right? The AIs are producing everything. It's like, why would you have to buy it from anybody? Why would you have to? Then at that point, basically, you've got almost a full like socialistic system.
We'll see. I don't know if it'll evolve down that way. I think there could be some unexpected evolution, sort of like why our society has evolved in a way that Marx didn't predict. We're not just factory workers and owners and labor. There's a management level, and there's
right,
and we're creating not just with it or mentally or whatever. So I think there'll have to be different innovations as things grow. But I think the interesting thing is the diaspora from cities. We won't need to live necessarily close to where we work, right?
Okay.
Unless you work for the federal government, you've got to go back to the office. You guys have to go back.
Yeah,
but
you guys go.
Everyone else can work from home, and that can be anywhere there's water, right? And so it's even moving not just to suburbs, but to the exurbs and the rural areas and places that are pretty that before it's like, oh, I would love to live here, like you go on vacation, but I got to go back to work in Detroit. You're like, no, I don't. I can I'm having all my needs are met. And so when you take that out where people can just choose where they want to live, are we going to get it? I mean, obviously everybody wants beachfront property, and AI cannot make that more affordable. But excluding beachfront property, there's large stretches of the West, especially, that people can live in that are not choosing to live there now because of proximity from work or from cities. So that could be a big change.
I'm worried. I mean, I am worried about the whole system because I think when you get to that point, it's like, so yeah, right. So Fusion, for example, Fusion's coming out soon. It won't be long. It'll probably be industrial by 2030, probably. So by 2030, we'll be able to have fusion centers that are around there, basically churning out what amounts to high finite energy, right? But they're still going to charge me. I guarantee it.
Oh yeah.
The question is why. The question is why are we, if we have infinite energy, like they keep saying, why? What's the cost of it? I mean, if the supply is infinite, then basic economics, the demand should, the cost of the item should be essentially zero.
Well, it's to encourage responsible use. So what happens, right? If I'm not paying utilities, right, on a cold night, I have the door open and the heater blasting.
Right.
I want fresh air, but I don't want to. I like the hot and cold mixture, and and you just start like wasting energy because you're not paying for it. And so having some sort of costing just encourages responsible use of the resource.
Yeah, but why do you need responsible use if the resource is essentially infinite?
Because the transmission of it is not infinite. Right. There's only so much the lines have that they can get out to people. Right? The ability to produce it, right? But you can't produce infinite at one time. You can say over time, it's not going to deplete or run out. But I can only send out through transmission lines a really high amount, and if people are irresponsible with that, now all of a sudden I start having brownouts. Not that we're going to run out on power source, but the power delivery system.
So you're saying that there will always be a limit to it. Well, so maybe that's true. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
That you don't, like with water, right? You don't want somebody just leaving the hose on and walking away because they don't have a meter on their house. You just want them to be like common sense and having a little bit of, even if it's a nominal fee kind of thing. But if all of a sudden, say you're charged $5 a month for electricity, which maybe inflation, that's even that $5 is such a nominal fee. But if you reach some level where you're clearly like being grossly irresponsible. Like you're using 10 times as much energy as your neighbors.
Right.
All of a sudden, that cost jumps up by several factors, and you're paying $5,000, and they start punishing you punitively.
Yeah.
Right? So, or through a gradient scale, but that's generally, I think, what a lot of utilities are. Why we have meters is just to encourage people to have common sense, be good neighbors, and not hog it all.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, it's a very it's good. The world is going to change so fast in the next 20 years. I'm not even sure I'm going to be able to keep up, even though I'm like studying it every day for hours for this show, just like this is basically my job now, is to keep up, and I don't know that I'll be able to. But anyway, I think we've had a good show, right? I think, guys, out there in the audience, if you have any other questions, fire them off in the comments, and we'll take a look. But it was great seeing you guys, and I hope to see you guys next time on Common Mansplaining.
Yeah, where the common idea is, it's all you need.
Keep it common.